All right, this is Steve. I'm going to make a video here, or try to give a good example of the adapter pattern. That's one of the 20-some patterns defined by the Gang of Four in the classic design patterns book. I'm going to do this in C#, and I'm going to try to write something that seems a little more pragmatic and explain it along the way. So, all right, we'll start an instance of Visual Studio here. And once again, I'll be coding this in C#. And what I'll do is I will go ahead and start a new project. Oh. And all right, I'll go ahead and make this a console app. And it doesn't really matter if it's .NET Core or regular or unleaded. It's just the pattern's pretty basic, C#. And I'll go ahead and call this demo pattern. Okay, so I've created this project here. It's called Demo Adapter Pattern, and I'm just going to make this a console application. And the idea is we're going to think of main as our client, or actually we'll just create a little class here, execute client. Go ahead and hit control period here, and we will generate a method called execute client. And the idea here is that in this case, a client is the code that calls other code. So sometimes that client can be a user interface or an API or something at the top tier, but it's relative. The client will be calling other code. And since it's a console app, I'm going to go ahead and put a little wait for user read key, just so we can see some results. All right, and throw a little we'll go ahead and execute this, and just to make sure that we can see that our application is running. And I'll drag the console app onto the screen. Here you see hello adapter. So we are good to go. We have a client. Now I'm going to go ahead and what I'd like to do in this example is I'm going to use a classic example of a bag of fruit. And what I'd like to do is, I'm kind of this mindless drone who puts a bunch of different fruit into his bag. And then at the end of the day, I'd like to go through those items in my bag of fruit and pull one out at a time and then peel it. Now, the problem here is not all fruit is peelable. An example would be an orange is peelable, a banana is peelable, but an apple, not so much. That'd be kind of hard. You'd have to dig in with your fingernails. So you'd probably end up, skinning it. So an apple would be skinnable, and a pear would be skinnable. So I'm going to go ahead and I'd like to create a list of peelable things. So for background, an adapter, you've seen it before. It might be, you might be traveling, going on vacation. Maybe you're from the United States and you go to Canada and you have your alarm clock and you'd like to plug it into the wall. And maybe for some reason the hotel doesn't use a United States standard outlet for your plug. So you might get yourself a United States standard to Canadian standard adapter. You would plug your alarm clock into the adapter, and the adapter would be plugged into the wall. And the idea in code with an adapter is that you might have, your client might be expecting a collection of objects that behaves to a certain kind of interface, but you might get a collection of objects that is different than that interface. So an adapter would basically translate one interface to another. All right, so what I'll do is I'll start by defining a bag of fruit, right? And I like to code first and kind of code down and create the things as I need them, right? So I'm going to create a bag of peelable fruit. Because remember, my intention is to go through this bag of fruit and peel all the things. So a new list of peelable things. And when I'm using an interface, I like to start, or the standard is we start with the letter I. So in this case, it's I peelable. All right, so we've got a couple problems right here. The first thing is my code doesn't know what a list is. So I'm gonna hit Control period, and it's gonna give me the option to correct that by using system collections generic. So this is just a way to hold on to a collection of things. I could have used an array, or I could have used a dictionary, or anything that holds on to a group of objects. In this case, I enjoy working with lists, so I'm gonna use a list. The second issue is I'm referencing an interface that doesn't exist yet. I haven't created it. So I'm going to go into my program and I'm going to create a folder. And I'm going to put my things into a folder called models. Models is really just a fancy word for things that you work with. Kind of like business objects, but usually meant to hold data. Sometimes those objects can do things. In this case, they can be peeled. So I'm going to go ahead and add an interface. All right, now I have a class that is peelable. And my class is going to be, or my interface is going to be really simple. It's going to do one thing. It's going to have a method that peels. And that's it. Don't even need these guys, so I'm going to do a quick remove and sort. And I need to make this an interface. There we go. Cool. All right. Now, normally I would create my concrete classes first and extract an interface, but now that I have created peelable, it can give me the option to add it as a reference. So now you see I've got demo adapter pattern models is being referenced because it's inside my namespace of models. iPeelable is in demo adapter pattern models. All right, cool. Now that I've got this list of peelable things, I would like to add some things to that list. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and add an orange. And I want to go ahead and add a banana. So I'll take my bag of peelable fruit and I'll add a new orange. Except we got a problem here. This orange doesn't exist. So quick little refactoring. I'm going to go ahead and generate an orange class in a new file. Cool, created one here. I'm going to slide that into my models folder. Once it's in my models folder, I'm going to go ahead and now here's the really neat thing. Because I used that shortcut by right-clicking and refactoring, it knew that I was trying to add orange to a list of iPeelables. So it automatically implemented the iPeelable interface. Well, it didn't implement it, it added it. Now it's going to ask me if I want to implement it. So I'll go ahead and click implement, and whammo, there's my method. Now I have an orange that is peelable because it has the peel method. So instead of throwing an exception, I'm going to go ahead and just do a console write. And of course, I need to add use system. And we're going to do console dot line. And we'll say peel an orange. going to save my work. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to take my bag of peelable fruit, and I'm going to add a new banana. And once again, I'm going to, I could just go to this little light bulb that appears automatically, or I could hit Control period. And I like this option. It's going to say generate class banana in a new file. So I'll go ahead and click that. Now banana is down here. And notice that, go ahead and, now the neat thing is it is using models because it's IPeelable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean that up a little bit. I'm going to throw banana into my models folder, and I need to make a little change. Now, because my banana is in the models folder, I should change my namespace to demo adapter pattern models, and then I don't need this using statement anymore. And in fact, I should do the same thing with all my other. So I'm going to take this model, change my namespace. Don't need that. I'm going to save my work. And open up my banana. You'll notice that I've got that little warning that says, hey, you haven't implemented peelable. So we'll go ahead and click implement interface. Once again, it creates the method. It says, it executes the peel method, or gives the user the ability to execute the peel method. And once again, I'm just going to use a console write line. You'll notice the console doesn't exist, so I'm going to add a using system. Write line. And I will say peel and N-A-N-A-S. All right. For funsies, I'm going to compile, make sure everything builds. Build has succeeded. So I'm going to go back to my program, and now I have a bag that includes an orange and a banana. Now, before I implement an adapter, at this point we haven't done anything with an adapter. All we've done is we've created a bag of peelable fruit, and what we'd like to do is we want to go ahead and loop through the items in our bag. Peel all the fruit in our bag. And so we'll do a little for each, tab, and we'll go ahead and bag of peelable fruit, tab back. So we are going to call it a fruit because each item is a fruit. Well, if that would be helpful. I like just calling it fruit, but since I really have a list of IPeelable, my IntelliSense was smarter than me, and it was saying, you really want to call this peelable. For our conversation here, I'm going to go ahead and call it a fruit. But they're right, it is a peelable item because you could have, other kinds of food that are peelable. All right, so now that I'm iterating through each of my fruits within my bag of peelable fruits, I'm going to go ahead and execute fruit.peel. Build that code, and I am going to run it in my console. And I'm going to drag that console onto the screen so you can see it. It has now iterated through my list, peel an orange, peel a banana. As a reminder, when you go to the banana class, you see all I'm doing is writing a line to the console when I hit the peel. I'm just saying, peel the banana. All right, so now here's where it gets interesting. I'm going to work a little differently here. I'm going to go to my models folder, and I'm going to go ahead and add a class. And I'm going to create an apple. And this apple is going to have a method called skin. So I'll just like void skin. As a reminder, when you're using void, that's an action as opposed to an expression. Nothing's being returned. So the action is to skin this apple. And I'm going to go ahead and console write line. All right, I'll just remove those unused sortings and go back to my main program, and I'm going to add apple to bag of fruit. And here's the thing. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to say you can't add that because it's not peelable, right? Well, let's look at that apple. Should we make it peelable? Should I throw my peelable here? And if I do, that doesn't work because this apple is not, it doesn't peel, it skins. So I'm going to undo that work. And in the real world, the reason we use adapters is because this apple probably already exists. And in the client is expecting a collection of peelable fruit, and we already have some existing code that contains skinnable fruit. So I'm going to go ahead and create an interface. I'll right-click on this, use quick action and refactoring, and I will extract an interface. And we will call this skinnable. And I'd like it to go into a separate file. And just to check my work, I'm going to open up iSkinnable. Cool. And it's got my interface, the contract that says to be skinnable, you have to have a method that says skin. And our friend refactoring tool went ahead and created the file for us. Now, apples are skinnable. What else is skinnable? Let's go ahead and add another class. Let's create a pear. Cool. All right. Remember, our pear is skinnable. I'm going to add a little, it's going to warn me. It's going to say, hey, so I'm going to hit Control Period to get that nice little refactoring menu to show up. And I'll go ahead and implement the interface. It's going to create an unimplemented method for skinning. And I'll go ahead and implement it by writing to the console. And I'll go ahead and write skin a pear. Once again, I'm going to clean up my unused usings. Cool, now I've got a pear, I've got an apple, I've got a banana, and I've got an orange. But the difference between my orange and my banana versus my apple and my pear is oranges are peelable. They implement the peelable interface, and you can see there's the peel method for them versus an apple or a pear that has the skin interface. So I'm going to go back to my program. Once again, I'm going to try to add this apple. And I also want to go ahead and add pear to the bag of fruit. And once again, you can see the pear also doesn't work because it's warning me that I can't convert this pear to a peelable. So how would we do that? This is where the adapter comes in. So I would like an adapter that converts skinnable things to peelable things. All right. So I like to write my code before I have it. It gives me an idea of how I'd like to consume it. In this case, I'd like to create a new, let's call it skinnable, make sure I spell that right, skinnable to peelable adapter. And I like to say what it is. So at the end of my class name, I like to say, if it's an adapter, I'd like to call it an adapter, right? Skinnable to peelable adapter. All right, so it's going to say it doesn't exist. All right, so we'll go ahead and create this into a new file. Cool, now I've got this class. I like to put my adapters into a separate folder. is to stay organized. So I'll go ahead and create this folder and I'll call it adapters. And I'll go ahead and put this guy into my adapters folder. Click on it to open it and update my namespace because we want our namespaces should always match our file structure because that makes it easier to find our code. And all right, so one thing you'll notice is that because we used the refactoring tool from when we were coding from our program file, when we auto-generated that adapter, it knew that I wanted it to be peelable. So it needs to implement a peelable interface, right? So I'll go ahead and click implement. All right, that's neat. Also, what's kind of cool here is that it implemented the dependency injection for me. It said, hey, you're going to want to convert the apple. So, except the thing is, I'd like to convert more than just the apple. I want to convert the apple and the pear and pretty much anything that's skinnable. So I'm going to change this from apple to iSkinnable. And I'm going to also change that here to my backing variable that it also created for me. And it's not really an apple anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and rename that to skinnable. And my backing variable is also skinnable. Skinnable. I like to capitalize my properties. Depends on where you work and what your standards are. Some people like to put an underscore in front or keep their private variables lowercase. I like to keep all my properties to use Pascal case, and because later on I might refactor this and make this public or whatever, and then I'll, if I ever refactor a property, I don't have to change the name. So that's not really important as much as what is important is you're using dependency injection to inject a skinnable thing. You're going to set it to a backing property, and then when you execute the peel on it, we're going to go ahead and peel that thing. So in this case, I'm going to take the skinnable backing property, and I'm going to go ahead and skin it. What I did there is I've got this adapter, and if I execute peel on this adapter, it's going to translate that action to skinning on the object that was passed in. Go ahead and save that. Go back to my program. And it makes more sense if you look at it from here. I've got this adapter. Now I just need to add the reference. Oh, wrong hotkey. Control period. And I'm going to go add using. So I've got this nice little quick action refactoring. Cool. All right, so that should work. So I've got this adapter, and I'm adapting this apple to an interface that expects iPeelable. So you'll notice that the pear is not working yet. It's still complaining. So I'll go ahead and also throw it into the adapter. Cool. My compiler seems happy. I don't have any red squigglies. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And I'll go ahead and drag my output window into this screen, and you can see peel an orange, peel a banana, skin an apple, skin a pear. So there you go. Hopefully that's a more tangible example of using an adapter. Now in the real world, what's probably going to happen is you're going to make a request from your client, and the client maybe is expecting a certain kind of business object or business model that has a certain kind of interface that, let's say, works for the presentation tier, and maybe you're going to bind that to the user interface, but you're beholden to a certain kind of interface. Now you might have a very similar object maybe at the business logic layer or coming from the service layer or whatever, but it's just a little bit different. And maybe because of coupling reasons, or maybe because it's an external library and you don't have control over it, you're not really able to change the source interface. In this case, the source interface would be the skinnable. So you can make that skinnable object play well with the peelable expectations by using an adapter. All right, I hope that helps.